There are mornings when silence feels heavier than words, when the air itself seems to carry the residue of yesterday's defeats. In those moments, waking up becomes more than a biological act. It turns into a negotiation with life. To start again from zero is to stand in front of a landscape where everything familiar has been dismantled: finances, confidence, and sometimes even hope. Yet within that empty field lies a fertile space, a territory where new agreements can be written between body, mind, and spirit. The dawn is not simply the beginning of hours, it is a laboratory of creation, where perception can be reshaped and energy can be redirected. In this delicate threshold, prosperity ceases to be a vague promise and becomes a process of coherence. Neuroscience and spirituality converge here. The early hours hold a plasticity that allows us to rewrite predictive patterns, those silent beliefs that dictate whether the world feels safe or threatening. When someone has faced scarcity for too long, the body carries this memory like a hidden alarm, interpreting each opportunity as risk. That is why the morning is sacred. It offers the rare chance to reset the emotional field, to remind the nervous system that abundance can also be a familiar state. The routine we explore is not about shortcuts or affirmations repeated without conviction. It is about creating alignment where thought and physiology agree, breathing with rhythm, feeling the heart synchronize with intention, writing small commitments that generate visible evidence of value. These are not rituals of fantasy, but steps that gradually rebuild trust in life. To start again requires more than hope. It requires the daily practice of becoming available to what already exists, but has been filtered out by a lens of fear. This journey begins with acceptance of the body's memory and recognition of its signals. From there, we move toward practices that open perception, elevate vibration, and reveal doors once hidden by scarcity. Each chapter of this path unfolds as a different perspective on the same theme: how to construct prosperity from a place of coherence and presence. By the conclusion, the pieces form a cycle, 60 minutes each morning dedicated to cleansing, aligning, and acting, until the extraordinary becomes ordinary, and the ordinary becomes the ground where prosperity naturally grows. To begin again after a season of loss is not simply to rearrange external circumstances, it is to confront the silent memories the body carries. Long before words surface, the body is already interpreting the day. Shoulders contract, breath becomes shallow, the chest tightens in ways that seem almost invisible, yet dictate the entire tone of experience. This is the body's language of memory. When the past has been marked by scarcity, failure, or rejection, the nervous system continues to prepare for those same outcomes, even when the conscious mind imagines a different future. What emerges is a dissonance. The mind sets goals of prosperity, while the body vibrates in defense. That contradiction creates a fragile ground where opportunities are either ignored or mistrusted, and each step forward feels like walking on unstable soil. At the root of this struggle lies the complex relationship between belief and sensation. Beliefs are not mere phrases in the head. They are predictive codes that the brain has inscribed through repetition. If the past taught that requests were denied, that work was undervalued, or that money carried risk, then the brain organizes perception through those expectations. The filtering system known as the reticular activating system, or RAS, ensures that we see more of what we anticipate. If the anticipation is scarcity, then the world presents evidence of scarcity everywhere. The internal state becomes the lens, and life seems to confirm the very fear that binds it. This is why affirmations, when practiced without inner coherence, often collapse. Repeating "I am abundant" while the body trembles in contraction only deepens the sense of fraudulence. The body whispers, "I do not believe you," and the subconscious aligns itself with that whisper. It is not lack of discipline that blocks manifestation, but lack of physiological agreement. Without coherence between heart, breath, and mind, intentions evaporate into abstraction. The morning offers a privileged window to rewrite this dialogue. In the first hour after waking, brainwaves hover between dream and wakefulness, creating a threshold where patterns can be softened and recalibrated. But the process must begin not with verbal declarations, but with embodied practices that restore safety. Prosperity can only enter where the body feels secure enough to receive, to breathe deeply, to slow the heart rate, to open the chest in posture, is to signal to the nervous system that danger has passed. From this embodied state of safety, affirmations no longer collide with resistance. They settle gently, like seeds falling on receptive soil. One effective practice for this recalibration is rhythmic breathing, often described as coherence breathing. Inhaling for 5 counts, exhaling for 5 counts, sustained for a few minutes, creates a measurable shift in heart rhythm. Science has shown that such coherence between heart and brain alters emotional perception, allowing intention to be felt as truth rather than fantasy. Accompanying this breathing with a focus on the chest rather than the head anchors awareness in the region, most connected to emotional resonance. Over time, this simple ritual teaches the body to recognize safety as the baseline rather than vigilance. Alongside breath, posture communicates silently with the psyche. To rise in the morning and stand with an open sternum is more than mechanical. It is symbolic. An expanded chest interrupts the habitual collapse associated with defeat. The body speaks before the mind articulates, and when the body's speech is one of openness, the mind follows with images of possibility. The tone of voice also plays its part. Speaking intentions quietly yet firmly transforms them from abstract hopes into commitments. To whisper, "Today I will offer value clearly. Today I will ask with respect. Today I will record the signs that support me," is to encode behavior with clarity, not simply dream. The next layer involves examining the beliefs themselves. Scarcity resides in the body, but it is sustained by narratives repeated over years. To write them down is to strip them of invisibility. When one places on paper the sentence, "Clients never pay up front," and beside it recalls a concrete instance when a client did exactly that, the brain is confronted with contradiction. This contradiction is crucial. It is the prediction error that forces reconsolidation of memory. Through this process, the brain acknowledges that its forecast of scarcity is not absolute. By adding a new hypothesis to be tested that very day, for example, offering 2 payment options, including one up front, the cycle of reconsolidation begins. Yet, beliefs are not dismantled by thought alone. They require evidence. That is why the morning practice culminates in a micro-action of value. Before distractions arrive, before screens flood the mind with other lives, one small but concrete offering is made to the world. It may be a voice message solving a minor problem, an introduction between 2 contacts, or the delivery of a draft. The size is irrelevant. What matters is tangibility and social connection. Prosperity does not circulate in the abstract, but in relationships. When the first act of the day creates value for another, the nervous system registers safety in giving and receiving. It learns that action, not fear, generates security. Symbolically, this entire process can be imagined as tuning a radio. The frequencies of opportunity already fill the air. Prosperity is not absent, it is simply unheard. A misaligned dial creates static, convincing the listener that no music exists. The morning routine is the hand adjusting the dial. Breath, posture, belief examination, focused action. Each step turns the knob closer to the right station. When alignment is reached, the melody emerges not as a new creation, but as a revelation of what was always present. Opportunities that once seemed invisible begin to appear, not because they were absent, but because perception was filtered otherwise. The silent pain of starting from zero lies in the tension between aspiration and embodiment. The mind desires prosperity, but the body recalls wounds. Healing begins not with denial of this pain, but with acknowledgement of its wisdom. The body resists because it remembers. By meeting that memory with new experiences of safety, clarity, and evidence, one rewrites the very script that governs daily perception. In this sense, prosperity is not summoned from the outside, but remembered from within, as the natural state obscured by fear. To walk this path requires patience and repetition, yet each morning provides a fresh chance to recalibrate. The first breath after waking, the first posture assumed, the first words spoken, and the first action taken are not trivial gestures. They are signatures of identity. They tell the nervous system who we are becoming and invite the environment to respond accordingly. So over weeks and months, these micro-gestures accumulate into a field of coherence strong enough to sustain new patterns of abundance. Thus the chapter closes with a reminder. Prosperity for those who start again is not a sudden reversal, but a gentle, persistent resynchronization between body and mind. The body must be convinced, not coerced. When safety is felt, beliefs shift, perception widens, and the hidden doors of opportunity become visible. In that visibility, action becomes natural, and prosperity ceases to be a distant dream, revealing itself instead as the natural outcome of coherence lived each morning. When a person attempts to rebuild life from the ground up, the greatest obstacle is often not material, but inherited. Within the mind, echo the voices of parents, teachers, communities, and past experiences that shaped the meaning of money and worth. These voices rarely vanish with age. They persist as subtle prohibitions. Asking is shameful, charging your worth is greedy, money corrupts. For many who start again, these phrases form an invisible cage, dictating how high they may rise and how freely they may move. The result is not only external limitation, but internal sabotage, a cycle in which individuals lower their value, accept unfavorable terms, and silently punish themselves for daring to want more. This self-punishment has a paradoxical nature. It often grows from noble intentions, from the desire to remain ethical, generous, or modest. Yet beneath the surface, it morphs into a form of asceticism, where one believes prosperity must be earned only after absolute perfection, only after proving worthiness beyond doubt. Until then, the individual settles for less, convinced that dignity lies in sacrifice rather than in balance. Over time, this stance erodes vitality. What appears as humility is, in practice, a denial of reciprocity, a refusal to allow life to give back in proportion to what has been offered. To transform this dynamic requires understanding how beliefs solidify. Neuroscience shows that memories are not static records, but predictive codes, designed to anticipate what is likely to occur next. When someone expects rejection, their brain prepares emotionally for it, filtering perception to confirm that expectation. Even when evidence of abundance appears, it may pass unnoticed because the filter has already decided otherwise. The only way to change such filters is through a process called reconsolidation, where old memories are re-evoked and then contradicted by new experiences. Without contradiction, the old pattern survives intact. Imagine someone convinced that nobody pays up front. They may design every offer with discounts, apologies, or vague terms that almost guarantee resistance. But if, one morning, they ask clearly for an upfront payment and receive agreement, the brain experiences a prediction error. The old belief collides with reality. In that moment, memory becomes pliable, capable of being rewritten. Repetition of such experiences gradually re-educates the nervous system, teaching it to expect fairness and reciprocity rather than denial. This process is not about abstract positivity, but about concrete evidence. Reflection alone rarely changes deep structures. Action does. That is why those who begin again must resist the temptation to wait until they feel completely healed before stepping into the marketplace. Waiting for healing without action often leads to endless self-analysis. Instead, small steps into real transactions, offering a modest service, stating a clear price, requesting timely payment, create the lived experiences that beliefs cannot deny. Evidence becomes the medicine that words alone cannot provide. A practical approach to reconsolidation can be described in 3 stages. First is evocation, naming the limiting belief and acknowledging its emotional weight. Writing, "I cannot sell without discount," and recognizing the shame or fear attached to it brings the memory into the light. Second is contradiction, deliberately creating a situation that disproves the belief, such as presenting a straightforward offer without apology. Third is integration, recording the outcome, whether positive or negative, and adjusting the next step. Even a refusal can be useful, for it teaches refinement of scope, value, or audience. The key is that each attempt provides data that the nervous system must absorb. Metaphorically, this resembles pruning a tree. A tree does not need to resolve its past storms. It needs to remove branches that steal sap without giving fruit. Beliefs that consume energy yet bear no prosperity are such branches. By testing reality with new offers, we discover which branches must be cut. The pruning may sting, but it clears space for light to reach the inner canopy. In that openness, fruit begins to appear, not because the tree learned new theories about sunlight, but because it finally allowed sunlight to touch its core. One of the profound errors in the prosperity journey is confusing worth with perfection. Prosperity does not require flawless behavior. It requires clarity and reciprocity. Charging fairly does not diminish generosity. It sustains it. Asking with clarity does not repel others. It allows them to understand how to meet us. When requests are vague, shame deepens and both sides lose dignity. When requests are firm yet respectful, trust increases, and both sides participate in balance. The emotional pain of starting from zero is magnified by comparison. People see others thriving, seemingly unburdened by the doubts that plague them. Yet what remains invisible are the countless small experiments those individuals made, the requests they dared to send, the prices they dared to state, the rejections they endured, and the corrections they integrated. Prosperity is rarely sudden. It is the cumulative effect of experiments carried out daily, each one reshaping the nervous system's prediction about what is possible. It is important to validate the difficulty of this work. To ask clearly when fear of rejection still lingers in the chest is an act of courage. The body may tremble, the voice may waver, yet each attempt is sacred because it challenges the prophecy of scarcity. Over time, the trembling lessens, replaced by the calm of recognition. The world can say yes, and when it does, life begins to flow differently. The doors that seemed locked reveal themselves as doors never truly tried. At the heart of this chapter is the understanding that beliefs are not chains of iron, but scripts of memory, rewritten through lived contradiction. Prosperity for those starting again requires more than faith. It requires evidence that the nervous system cannot refute. Every request made with clarity, every transaction honored with dignity becomes a line of new code. These lines accumulate until the old program of self-punishment dissolves, replaced by a program of reciprocity and growth. Thus, to step into prosperity is not to abandon humility but to redefine it. True humility is not accepting less than one's worth. It is recognizing the sacredness of exchange. To give and to receive in balance honors both sides of the relationship. When this truth is lived daily, prosperity ceases to be a fragile hope and becomes the natural fruit of a tree, pruned to breathe again. There are mornings when the first gesture is not a stretch or a breath, but the instinctive reach for a screen. In seconds, the eyes are flooded with curated images of lives that seem brighter, fuller, more abundant. Someone else's triumphs parade across the mind before one's own day has even begun. This ritual of comparison may appear harmless, but beneath it lies a subtle erosion of vitality. The nervous system reads the distance between the self and the imagined other, and the body responds with contraction. Shoulders sink, breath shallows, and the day begins already in deficit. Prosperity does not die because of lack of opportunity, but because attention has been drained before the first step forward. The modern mind is constantly fragmented. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of pursuit and motivation, becomes entangled in endless loops of micro-rewards. Each scroll delivers a spark of novelty, but also depletes the baseline capacity for focus. When this pattern is established upon waking, the very chemistry of the morning is hijacked. The task that could bring tangible results, a proposal, a call, a delivery, feels disproportionately heavy compared to the feather-light tap of a screen. This is not moral weakness. It is neurochemistry misaligned with purpose. To cultivate prosperity in this environment requires a radical reversal, protecting the sanctity of the first hour from unnecessary noise. Silence in this context is not emptiness, but restoration. When one sits quietly, eyes relaxed, simply sensing the weight of the body and the rhythm of breath, something profound occurs. The turbulence of comparison begins to settle, much like a storm-tossed lake clearing when the winds calm. The mind regains transparency, and with it the ability to see opportunities hidden beneath the surface. This discipline of silence is not a denial of the outer world, but a prioritization of inner coherence. 10 minutes of genuine stillness at dawn can recalibrate the entire field of attention. From that stillness emerges the clarity to name one intention for the day, not a vague wish, but a specific action that brings value into the social field. Prosperity does not unfold in isolation. It arises when others perceive and respond to our contributions. The first clear delivery of the morning, no matter how modest, generates momentum that ripples outward. A practical framework for this is what might be called a monodose of prosperity. Rather than scattering energy across multiple unfinished tasks, one chooses a single action of high perceived value and completes it fully. It may be the return of a detailed proposal, a clear piece of feedback, or the creation of a small prototype. What matters is not its scale, but its clarity, and the fact that another person can recognize it as useful. By dedicating the first concentrated block of attention to this monodose, the nervous system learns to associate mornings with accomplishment, not depletion. Supporting this practice is the principle of 80-20, the recognition that not all actions carry equal weight. By mapping the intersection of high value and low effort, one identifies the tasks that create disproportionate impact. Beginning the day with such an action not only conserves energy, but multiplies returns. Over time, this repetition engraves a new rhythm. The body comes to expect that each morning will deliver at least one tangible offering to the world. Prosperity, in turn, begins to circulate more freely. The metaphor of the lake captures this reality. When water is agitated, it appears opaque. One cannot see the bottom nor trust the depth. Yet the clarity is not lost, only concealed. The moment disturbance ceases, sediment settles and transparency returns. Similarly, the mind, obscured by comparison and noise, still holds clarity within. By protecting the morning from unnecessary disturbances, one allows the sediment of distraction to sink. From there, the bottom becomes visible. The opportunities that were always present but hidden beneath turbulence. Comparison often masquerades as inspiration, but in practice, it corrodes self-trust. Observing the flow of others without first entering one's own creates paralysis. The mind convinces itself that progress belongs elsewhere, to someone more prepared or more deserving. Yet the truth is that prosperity requires participation, not observation. Each act of comparison delays entry into the current of life. Silence, intention, and a focused delivery restore participation, making the individual a co-creator rather than a spectator. The invisible pain described here is not easily confessed. Many suffer it quietly, ashamed that they cannot resist distractions or that they feel diminished in the face of others' achievements. Yet acknowledging it is the first step toward liberation. By naming the pattern, I lose my mornings to comparison, one brings it into awareness. From awareness, choice becomes possible. And when choice is enacted through silence and monodose, the cycle begins to shift. In this process, the goal is not to eliminate comparison entirely. Comparison is a natural human tendency. The transformation lies in reassigning its place. Instead of beginning the day by gazing outward, one begins by anchoring inward. Only after contributing something tangible does one allow the gaze to expand. By then, the nervous system is already aligned with evidence of one's own capacity, and the sting of comparison diminishes. Thus, prosperity for those who start again requires not only courage in asking and clarity in offering, but discipline in attention, protecting dopamine, cultivating silence, and completing one act of high value are practices that may appear small, yet they alter the trajectory of entire days. Days accumulate into weeks, and weeks into a new identity, not one lost in observation, but one defined by participation and coherence. To live this way is to rediscover dignity in the ordinary. The first breath in silence, the first clear action delivered, the first evening reflection on what was completed. These are the building blocks of prosperity. Over time, they carve a channel through which abundance can flow, not as a sudden miracle, but as a steady river. The fragmented mind becomes whole. The weight of comparison dissolves, and prosperity is revealed not as distant, but as the natural outcome of clarity and attention lived each morning. In the journey of those who rebuild life from zero, one of the most subtle obstacles is the tendency to cultivate inner rituals without external bridges. Many awaken determined to elevate their vibration, dedicating time to meditation, journaling, or silent affirmations. These practices are meaningful, yet when they remain enclosed within private space, they risk becoming a performance directed only to the self. Spiritual alignment without expression in the social field can nurture an illusion of progress, while the external reality of money, contracts, and opportunities remains unchanged. The result is a paradox: an individual who feels inwardly committed to prosperity, but outwardly invisible to the structures where prosperity circulates. The wound of performance emerges when spirituality is used as a refuge from exposure. Behind polished rituals and serene affirmations often hides a fear of direct confrontation with the transactional world, stating a price aloud, declaring deadlines, negotiating scope. These acts carry the vulnerability of being seen and possibly rejected. Instead of entering this vulnerability, many retreat into private practices, convincing themselves that when their vibration is high enough, external doors will open on their own. While intention shapes experience, intention without articulation in the social realm is incomplete. Prosperity requires coherence between inner state and outer offering. This coherence can be understood as the marriage between energetic signature and tangible proposal. Every individual radiates a felt sense, the way their presence affects others, whether through calm, clarity, or confidence. This signature is subtle yet powerful, often determining trust more than technical detail. However, without a clear offering that translates this signature into action, others cannot respond. Conversely, even the best offering falters if carried by an energy of apology or self-erasure. The bridge between inner alignment and external prosperity is built when energy and offering converge in harmony. A common misconception is that asking for compensation lowers vibration, as if requesting value from others signals lack. Yet asking with clarity and reciprocity is itself a vibrational elevation. It brings order to the field, turning nebulous desire into structured agreement. A request framed with boundaries and benefits communicates not desperation, but integrity. It tells both the universe and the human counterpart, here is what I offer, here is what I ask in return, here is the mutual benefit. Such articulation is not greed, but clarity, the very substance that allows energy to flow freely between people. To integrate this principle into daily rhythm, a ritual of articulation can be practiced. After coherence, breathing, and silence, dedicate a few minutes to writing a specific request in structured form: what you deliver, by when, under what conditions, and the benefit for the other. Speak it softly aloud, not as a plea but as rehearsal of clarity. This practice rewires the nervous system to experience asking as safe and dignified. Over time, the trembling of old shame gives way to the steadiness of embodiment. When the request is later spoken to another person, the body already recognizes the posture and tone, reducing friction. Complementing this is the concept of micro-action. Prosperity does not require monumental contracts overnight. It grows through consistent offerings that lower risk for the other while building evidence for the self. Choosing one person who already perceives your value and proposing a small step, a pilot service, a concise audit, a limited prototype, creates an immediate bridge between energy and transaction. These micro-actions accumulate into credibility. The marketplace, once indifferent, begins to recognize your rhythm of delivery, and trust expands. An additional layer is experimentation, often described as social A/B testing. By crafting two versions of a message or proposal and offering them to comparable audiences, one gains data not from speculation, but from reality. Which version evokes less resistance? Which one generates swifter engagement? The nervous system, often paralyzed by perfectionism, learns through this process that clarity emerges not from endless preparation, but from interaction. Each response, whether yes or no, becomes material for refinement. The symbolic image here is that of the river and the bridge. Vibration alone is a flowing river, beautiful but uncrossable. Offering alone is a bridge without water, a structure leading nowhere. Only when the river of energy meets the bridge of form can others cross. Prosperity manifests not in isolated currents of intention, but in crossings, moments where another human being traverses from need to fulfillment through your offering. Each morning dedicated to strengthening both river and bridge expands the capacity for such crossings. This chapter also requires acknowledging the cultural narratives that complicate this integration. Many have been taught that humility means silence, that charging fairly signals arrogance, or that generosity demands self-erasure. These beliefs distort spiritual practice into performance. True humility is not to deny one's worth, but to honor the sacred reciprocity of exchange. True generosity is not vagueness, but clarity that allows both sides to flourish. To redefine these values is to heal the wound of performance, transforming private ritual into public coherence. It is equally vital to recognize the fragility of those first attempts. When one states a price after years of undercharging, The body may tremble. When one articulates boundaries after seasons of concession, shame may surface. Yet these reactions are not signs of failure. They are evidence that the nervous system is stretching beyond its old cage. To persist through this discomfort is to train the body to recognize clarity as safe, until one day the voice no longer shakes and the boundary no longer feels alien. Prosperity, then, is not the abandonment of spirituality, but its extension. It is prayer given form in contracts, meditation embodied in delivery, vibration translated into agreements that feed both spirit and society. The sacred and the practical are not separate. They are two sides of one truth. When lived together, they dissolve the false divide between inner growth and outer prosperity. To start again from zero is to face not only external scarcity, but also the temptation to remain hidden in performance. The invitation of this chapter is to step beyond the private stage, to allow energy and offering to meet, to build bridges where rivers already flow. In doing so, one ceases to act prosperity and begins to live it, not as a spectacle, but as a daily crossing between inner coherence and outer contribution. To begin again from nothing is to discover that prosperity is not a sudden windfall, but a daily practice of coherence. Each morning becomes an altar where the fragments of yesterday are gathered, acknowledged, and transformed into a rhythm that welcomes abundance. Prosperity does not arrive through fantasies of escape, but through steady alignment between body, mind, and action. Breath steadies the heart. Silence clears the lake of the mind. Clarity reframes inherited beliefs, and tangible offerings weave vibration into social reality. These gestures, repeated with patience, accumulate into a cycle strong enough to rewrite the nervous system's memory of scarcity. What emerges is a purpose no longer fragile, but definite. Napoleon Hill spoke of definiteness of purpose as the engine of success, and here it appears in embodied form. One knows what to do, how to ask, and when to deliver. Neville Goddard reminded us that imagination, when lived as present reality, transforms circumstances. In this method, imagination is not a retreat, but a rehearsal of clarity. The voice spoken softly in the morning becomes the request spoken firmly in the world. Prosperity begins to circulate, not as a distant miracle, but as the ordinary consequence of coherence lived each dawn. The invitation is simple, yet profound. Coherence first, evidence next. Silence. Breathe. Articulate. Offer. Record. Repeat until the body recognizes prosperity as safe, until the mind expects reciprocity, until the social field responds naturally. Then prosperity is not forced. It flows. In that flow, life itself becomes lighter, responsibility becomes dignified, and abundance ceases to be an exception, becoming instead the natural rhythm of existence. Now I ask you a question. How many more mornings will you allow to pass before you choose to realign your body, your mind, and your spirit with the prosperity already waiting for you? This decision is not about someday. It is about the first hour of tomorrow. If this message has touched you, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, because here we continue exploring the sacred union of spirituality and practical prosperity. Do not stop here. On the screen, you will find the next video, prepared to guide you deeper into your own transformation. Continue watching, allow the journey to unfold, and remember, every dawn holds the power to open the doors you could not see yesterday.